My baby.
Let's walk over here. Hey, walk over
That's
here.
the father of my children. Please, sir, I swear to God, it was a complete accident. I don't have no shoes on. I'm sorry, sir. Please, God. Please, God, I'm sorry. My husband.
The death of Telvin Osborne, the call that shook Burke County. The night was cold and still in Burke County, Georgia, a typical late winter evening with a sharp wind scraping the pine trees outside the small, quiet house on Gresham Landing Road. At 1:13 a.m., that quiet was shattered. 911, what's your emergency? The voice on the other end of the line was frantic, slurred, and rising with each second. I shot him. I didn't mean to. He had a knife. He came at me. I was scared. Ma'am, calm down. Who did you shoot? My boyfriend. He's not moving. Oh my God. Please hurry. He's bleeding everywhere. The dispatcher, trying to steady the conversation, dispatched deputies and an ambulance. What she didn't yet know, what no one knew, was that this call would be the start of a story that would divide families, ignite outrage, and force an entire community to confront difficult truths about violence, justice, race, and trauma. Within 12 minutes, 2 sheriff's deputies arrived at the scene. The small single-story house was dark, except for the flickering light from the kitchen window. The front door stood slightly ajar. Inside, on the cold tile floor, lay a man face up, lifeless, a pool of blood blooming beneath him. He was identified as Telvin Deshaun Osborne, age 35. The woman holding the phone, shaking, barefoot, and reeking of alcohol, was Hannah Grace Cobb, age 27, his girlfriend of nearly 3 years. She was the one who had pulled the trigger. Telvin Osborne, roots, struggles, redemption. To understand what happened that night, to understand how a relationship turned deadly, you have to start with who Telvin Osborne was. Born in 1988 in Augusta, Georgia, Telvin was the first of 3 children raised by a single mother, Lisa Osborne. She worked at a textile mill and later as a home health aide, struggling to keep her kids fed and off the streets. Telvin was quiet, introspective, and strong-willed. He had a hard stare, but a soft heart. In high school, he played football wide receiver, fast and reliable, until he dropped out during his junior year after his girlfriend became pregnant. I didn't want to be another ghost dad, he once told a coworker. So I stayed. He worked every job he could. Landscaping, moving furniture, stocking warehouse shelves. It wasn't glamorous, but he showed up, and that counted in Burke County. He was no stranger to hardship. A few misdemeanor arrests in his 20s, a weed charge, driving without a license made things harder, but he never gave up. By 2023, Telvin was working full-time at a freight distribution center. He had joint custody of his 2 children and had just started studying online to get certified in HVAC repair. He wanted to be more, said his cousin Deontay. He wasn't stuck in the past, he was trying. People who knew him best described Telvin as a protector, someone who took care of others even when he was struggling himself. He didn't have a flashy personality. He wasn't loud. He didn't flex on social media. He was the guy who helped you move on a hot day, then wouldn't ask for a dime, said a neighbor, a real one. But there was another side, a deeply private man who bottled things up. And sometimes those bottles broke open, especially when it came to love. Hannah Cobb, storm inside a smile. Hannah Cobb grew up just outside Waynesboro, Georgia, in a world shaped by instability. Her mother, a waitress with untreated bipolar disorder, cycled through jobs and boyfriends like seasons. Hannah's father disappeared when she was a baby. By middle school, she was already in trouble, fighting at school, skipping class, and using pills she found in her mother's purse. By 15, she was in foster care. By 18, she was pregnant. By 22, she had 2 kids and 2 restraining orders filed, both against former partners, both dismissed within months. She was the kind of person who could make you laugh and cry in the same conversation. She had charisma, but it came wrapped in chaos. She was sweet until she wasn't, said a former classmate. It was like a switch. If she felt attacked, even just emotionally, she went into fight mode. Hannah drifted from job to job, server, cashier, receptionist, never staying long. Alcohol was a steady companion. By her mid-20s, she was living with her grandmother, and bouncing between co-parenting disputes and short-lived relationships. In 2021, she met Telvin Osborne at a bar in Augusta. The attraction was instant and dangerous. They were fire and gasoline, said someone close to both. There was love there, no doubt, but also fear, jealousy, control. For a while, it seemed like Telvin gave her the stability she'd never had. He had a job. He didn't hit her. He tried to help with her kids. But their differences, the trauma they both carried, and the pressure of life and poverty began to corrode what little peace they had. By the time she moved into his house in late 2023, the relationship had shifted. Friends noticed the change, the constant arguments, the drinking, the accusations. She called me crying one day, said a friend. Said Telvin was controlling, that he made her feel crazy. But then she'd go right back to him. And Telvin, he was frustrated but committed. He confided in friends that he didn't know how to help her or himself. "I'm tired," he once texted. "She's either crying, yelling, or drinking. I don't know who I'm living with anymore." Still, they stayed together. A doomed weekend, February 16th to 17th, 2024. It was a Friday, and for most people in Burke County, that meant payday, takeout, and maybe a little liquor to start the weekend. For Telvin Osborne and Hannah Cobb, it meant one more round in the never-ending fight between their better angels and their worst habits. According to his time card, Telvin clocked out of the warehouse at 5:27 p.m. He was tired, but not in a bad mood. Surveillance footage from a nearby corner store showed him picking up a pack of cigarettes, a frozen pizza, and a six-pack of Coors Light. He nodded to the cashier. No signs of agitation. Back at home, Hannah had already been drinking. Vodka, the cheap kind. The bottle sat open on the kitchen counter next to an ashtray and her phone. Text messages retrieved later from that phone would paint a chilling timeline. 3:47 p.m. Hannah to her friend Shan. "He always says it's my fault. I swear he'll push me too far one day. For 12 p.m., he's not even home, and I'm already anxious. I hate how he makes me feel small." By 6 p.m., Telvin was home, and for a little while, things were calm. They watched a rerun of Family Feud, ate pizza, and sat on the couch in silence. Hannah scrolled through her phone. Telvin sipped a beer and smoked a cigarette on the porch. It could have been just another night, but then came the jealousy. Telvin's phone buzzed with a text. He smiled just briefly. Hannah saw it. She asked who it was. He said it was a coworker. She didn't believe him. 7:41 p.m., Hannah to Shan. "He's lying. I know it. I want to scream." 8:15 p.m., Telvin to his cousin Deontay. "She already drunk and accusing me. Pray for me, bro." They argued quietly at first, but by 9:30, neighbors could hear the yelling. One would later report it sounded like someone was throwing things. Another said they heard the words, "Get out and you don't own me," shouted repeatedly. At 10:11 p.m., Hannah texted her mother, "He's gonna leave me. I can feel it, and I can't go through that again." At 11:03 p.m., Telvin texted his cousin again, "She's drunk. Glass broke in the kitchen. I think I'm sleeping in the car." But he didn't leave, and that decision would cost him everything. The moment it broke, at approximately 12:45 a.m., something snapped. According to Hannah's later statement to investigators, the argument escalated when she accused Telvin of cheating. He allegedly told her she was crazy and that he was done playing therapist. She claimed he shoved her into the wall. No bruises were found. She claimed he went to the sink and grabbed a kitchen knife. The blade was recovered later, dry, clean, with no prints. Investigators found it odd that it was placed in the sink, not on the floor, and showed no signs of recent handling. What's known for sure is this. Hannah went into the bedroom and retrieved a silver .380 caliber Taurus handgun, Telvin's legally registered weapon, which he kept in a drawer for home protection. She came back into the kitchen. Telvin was near the table, reportedly with his back turned. According to forensic reports, he turned around just as she entered the room. There was no physical scuffle, no chase, no knife in his hand when police arrived. A single shot rang out. Telvin collapsed instantly. The bullet tore through his upper chest, puncturing his lung and heart. He gasped once, then fell backward. A chair tipped over. Blood spread across the tile like oil. Hannah dropped the gun, stood over him in shock, and grabbed her phone. The 911 call came in at 1:13 a.m. "He's bleeding. I didn't mean to. He came at me, he had a knife." She repeated that line again and again. But when police arrived, they found no such knife near Telvin's body. Just the pistol, the overturned chair, and a broken wine glass. What the deputies found. The first two deputies on the scene later testified that the house was eerily quiet, except for the woman screaming inside. They described Hannah as hysterical, barefoot, and covered in smears of blood on her hands and forearms. She was holding a cell phone, still connected to the 911 dispatcher. She was crying, but coherent, though her words were slurred. A field breathalyzer later recorded a blood alcohol content of 0.14, nearly twice the legal driving limit. Telvin Osborne lay face up in the kitchen. There were no signs of movement after the shot, no drag marks, no struggle. Blood had pooled beneath his back and shoulder. The silver .380 Taurus pistol was located 6 feet away. It had one round fired, and the slide was locked back. A kitchen knife was located in the sink, clean, dry, and bearing no fingerprints. Its position was inconsistent with being held and dropped in a struggle. It looked, as one investigator later put it, like it had been sitting there since the dishes. Other details: a half-empty vodka bottle stood on the counter. A wine glass had shattered on the floor. The kitchen chair had fallen back, suggesting movement or collapse. Telvin's phone was on the coffee table, buzzing with missed calls and texts. Hannah was taken into custody, but not arrested. The lead deputy wrote in the report, "The subject states the shooting was in self-defense. There is no current evidence of additional suspects." Scene secured for GBI Crime Unit processing. At 3:17 a.m., crime scene technicians arrived. Over the next 6 hours, they photographed, bagged, dusted, measured, and logged every item in the home. Hannah was transported to the sheriff's office for questioning. She waived her right to an attorney and gave a statement that would later become the focal point of the entire case. The interrogation room. At 6:45 a.m., hours after the shooting, Hannah Cobb sat alone in a small, windowless room inside the Burke County Sheriff's Office. Her sweatshirt had been taken as evidence, and she wore a gray blanket over her shoulders. Her hands were red-stained with blood, wiped clean, then red again from scratching at her arms. She looked tired, not disoriented, tired, like someone who had finally crashed after weeks of staying emotionally upright. Detectives offered her coffee, which she refused. She declined an attorney. When asked if she wanted to make a statement, she nodded silently. The video of her interview, later leaked and watched in courtroom circles, revealed a woman spinning between grief, guilt, and rationalization. "I didn't want to shoot him," she said, "but he wouldn't stop. He was yelling, pushing me, and then he went for the knife." "Where was the knife?" "In the sink, I think." "Oh yeah, no, he picked it up. I told him to stop. I screamed. I panicked." The detective pressed gently. "Did he threaten you?" "Yes. I mean, not with words, but he had that look, like he was going to snap. He said I was nothing. He told me he was leaving me." When asked why she had gone for the gun, she said, "I thought he was going to kill me, or hurt me real bad. I just wanted him to stop." But several parts of her story didn't match the evidence. There were no marks on her body, no defensive wounds, no signs of a struggle, and the knife, clean and dry, sat in the sink, untouched. She was released that morning without charges. Deputies cited lack of probable cause to arrest. The official line: the investigation was ongoing, and all options remained open. To Telvin's family, it felt like betrayal. Autopsy, forensics, and doubt. The full autopsy report on Telvin Osborne was completed 5 days after the shooting by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. It would become the foundation for both sides of the eventual grand jury argument. The findings: the cause of death was a single gunshot wound to the chest. The bullet entered through the upper left portion of the chest, passing downward and slightly left to right. It pierced the left lung and heart, causing massive internal bleeding. Death was likely within seconds of impact. The entry wound had no soot, stippling, or burn marks, suggesting the gun was fired from a distance of at least 2 to 4 feet. No injuries were found on Osborne's hands, face, or arms. Toxicology revealed a moderate amount of alcohol in his system, equivalent to approximately 2 to 3 beers. The forensic team also analyzed the scene. The trajectory of the bullet matched the theory that Telvin was seated or bending forward when he was shot, not standing in a threatening posture. No fingerprints were found on a kitchen knife, not even Hannah's or Telvin. Blood spatter analysis suggested that Telvin was stationary at the time of the shot and collapsed where he stood. The .380 Taurus pistol had fingerprints from both Telvin and Hannah, but only hers were found on the trigger and magazine release. For the DA's office, the question wasn't whether Telvin had died unjustly. The question was whether a jury could be convinced beyond reasonable doubt that Hannah had not acted in fear, grief, rumors, and rage. The day Telvin Osborne's autopsy report leaked to the press, his sister Siobhan stood on the steps of the Burke County Courthouse and gave a statement. "My brother didn't deserve to die. He wasn't a violent man, and he sure as hell wasn't coming at nobody with no knife. They need to arrest her. Right now." The crowd behind her cheered and chanted, "Justice for Telvin." The local NAACP chapter issued a public letter to the district attorney's office, demanding equal application of the law regardless of race or gender. On Facebook, a group titled #Justice for TELVIN gathered over 2,000 members in 3 days, but not everyone agreed. Some voiced support for Hannah, framing her as a woman trapped in an abusive relationship. "You never know what goes on behind closed doors," wrote one commenter. "Just because he was nice to y'all doesn't mean he was nice to her." Others called out the racial dynamics. Telvin was a black man with no violent criminal record. Hannah was a white woman with a documented history of emotional instability and alcohol abuse. If it were reversed, if he shot her and said she came at him with a knife, would he be walking free? Asked a local activist. We all know the answer. Telvin's funeral was held at New Hope Baptist Church. Hundreds came, friends, co-workers, old teachers. His mother collapsed during the service. His children sat quietly in the front pew, holding each other's hands. Meanwhile, Hannah Cobb had gone quiet. She stopped posting on social media. She stopped answering calls. She stayed with a cousin in Millen and waited for the hammer to fall or for the whole thing to blow over. The DA's dilemma. District Attorney Susan Klein was not unfamiliar with pressure. A former public defender turned prosecutor, she had held her post in Burke County for just over 5 years. Known for her cautious pragmatism and tendency to avoid the spotlight, Klein was thrust into the center of a firestorm following Telvin Osborne's death. Within days of the shooting, her office was inundated with calls. Civil rights groups wanted action. Telvin's family demanded arrest. Local activists started organizing rallies. Even members of the county board quietly urged Klein to do something before it gets worse. But the evidence wasn't clear-cut. Telvin had been shot by his girlfriend, a woman who claimed he came at her with a knife. There were no witnesses inside the home, no surveillance footage. And while forensics undercut her self-defense claim, they didn't completely disprove it either. And so, Klein made a decision. Let the grand jury decide. That choice, though legally sound, was also politically calculated. It allowed her to shift the burden of judgment onto 12 anonymous citizens and avoid accusations of personal bias or overreach. The evidence will be presented in full. Klein said during a press briefing, "We believe the grand jury is best suited to determine whether criminal charges are appropriate in this tragic and complex case." The grand jury was set for May 13, 2024. The stage was set and the pressure doubled. Behind closed doors, grand jury proceedings in Georgia are conducted in secret. No cameras, no reporters, no defense attorneys, just the district attorney, a court reporter, and 12 ordinary people tasked with deciding whether to indict. The panel, a mix of men and women, black and white, young and old, sat in the courthouse annex on Liberty Street. For 4 hours, they heard from the lead detective, who described the crime scene in detail, the GBI pathologist, who explained the bullet's downward trajectory, a forensic analyst, who testified there were no prints on the knife, Telvin's sister, who emotionally described her brother's nonviolent nature. Excerpts from text messages and Hannah's interrogation video. Klein played it straight presenting the evidence without embellishment. She did not push for a specific charge, but she made sure they understood one key detail. The victim was seated or bending when the shot was fired. That is not consistent with a knife-wielding assailant charging someone in fear. When it came time for a vote, the room was tense. Some jurors reportedly felt that Hannah was emotionally unstable, and that perhaps her fear, while unfounded, had still been real to her. Others couldn't get past the physical evidence. No bruises, no fingerprints on the knife, and a bullet fired downward. Still, under Georgia law, fear, even unreasonably perceived fear, could complicate a murder or manslaughter charge. And so, the decision came in. No bill. Hannah Cobb would not be indicted. No charges would be filed. The decision was handed down at 3:14 p.m. The news broke by 4 o'clock. By 6 p.m., Burke County was burning with outrage. Shockwaves. Siobhan Osborne was folding laundry when she got the call. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed onto the carpet. Her mother, Lisa, stared blankly at the kitchen wall for nearly an hour. Telvin's children asked what no bill meant. No one could give them a real answer. It means, Lisa Osborne finally said, that they let the woman who killed your daddy walk free. Outside the courthouse, dozens gathered within hours. By nightfall, over 150 people, including local clergy, youth organizers, and members of Telvin's union, were holding candles and chanting, "No justice, no peace. Telvin matters. Say his name." Civil rights attorney Jamel Wexler issued a statement. What we've seen today is a tragic example of how the legal system protects white defendants who harm black lives, even when the evidence is overwhelming. This decision sends a clear message. Some deaths just don't matter. Hannah Cobb remained in hiding. Her cousin told reporters she was relieved but still shaken. She had, in her words, lost the love of her life and never meant to hurt anyone. Few believed her. Fewer forgave her. Online, debate erupted, vicious, personal, and unrelenting. Some argued that Hannah was mentally unwell and incapable of rational judgment. Others said she was a manipulative abuser who played the victim and got away with murder. A local reverend, speaking from the pulpit that Sunday, called it plainly. If Telvin had been white and Hannah had been black, you know she'd be in jail right now. Don't lie to yourself. You know. Burke County was fractured, not by a riot or a verdict, but by silence, bitterness, and the slow realization that justice, like pain, is not equally distributed. Picking up pieces, life moved forward in Burke County. But for Telvin Osborne's family, time became a looping echo, each day starting with his absence and ending with the pain of knowing no one would ever pay for it. His mother, Lisa Osborne, couldn't bring herself to enter his house. She gave away most of his clothes to a local shelter and donated his books to a high school reading program. But she kept one thing, a worn Atlanta Falcons hoodie that still smelled like her son. "I sleep with it," she told a reporter months later. "It don't make sense, but it helps me breathe." His sister Siobhan became the guardian of Telvin's 2 young children. One of them had nightmares. The other refused to speak about Daddy's house. The family filed a civil, wrongful death suit against Hannah Cobb in August 2024. Their attorney, Jamel Wexler, alleged that Hannah willfully and recklessly caused the death of Telvin Osborne and sought damages of $3 million. The suit was less about money and more about dignity. "We just want it on record," Siobhan said, "that what she did was wrong and that the world didn't forget." But Hannah Cobb never responded. She had vanished from public life. The court date came and went. The Osbornes were awarded a default judgment, a symbolic win, unlikely to ever be paid. Still, the family pressed on. In Telvin's name, they started a small scholarship fund, the Osborne Legacy Grant, to help young black men in Burke County afford trade school. The first recipient was a 19-year-old named Marcus, who was studying to be an electrician. Telvin wanted to work with his hands, Lisa said at the award ceremony. So now, someone else will. Where she went, Hannah Cobb left Burke County 3 days after the grand jury decision. A friend drove her to Savannah, where she stayed with an aunt. She deleted her social media, changed her number, and applied for a job at a laundromat under a different last name. She kept her head down. She never gave another statement. Privately, friends said she rarely spoke about the night of the shooting. But when she did, her words were fractured and strange. One recalled Hannah saying, "I thought he would stop. I just needed him to stop." There were rumors of therapy, rumors of drinking again, rumors of suicide attempts, but nothing concrete. Legally, she was free. But morally, spiritually, she had become a pariah. One of Telvin's cousins saw her at a Walmart on the edge of Chatham County. She looked like a ghost, he said, like she was walking but not living. She didn't attend the civil trial. She didn't file for bankruptcy. She didn't defend herself. In every way that mattered, Hannah Cobb had disappeared. And in Burke County, most people stopped saying her name, as if pretending she never existed could somehow rewind the past. The long silence. There is no cinematic ending in true crime. No swelling music or last-minute confession. Just a long silence, and the people left to live in it. Telvin Osborne was buried in Hillcrest Memorial Cemetery. His headstone reads, "Loved, missed, never forgotten," in the quiet homes and churches of Waynesboro. Some still talk about that February night, but most don't. The pain is too sharp, the facts too slippery, the ending too empty. The law did not indict Hannah Cobb, but the truth, in its heavy, silent way, did not absolve her either. For the people who knew Telvin, justice was not measured by courtrooms. It was measured by memory, by the kind of man he was. He worked hard, said one of his friends. He raised his kids. He tried to help people. He didn't deserve to die like that. And yet, he did. The case of Telvin Osborne is not just a story about one man's death. It's a story about the lines we draw between fear and violence, between self-defense and guilt, between who gets the benefit of the doubt and who doesn't. It's about what happens when the truth doesn't match the verdict. And it's about a county, like so many others, where justice remains a question, not an answer.